Good evening, and welcome to Athens City Council. Tonight is a regular session of council. Today is Monday, December 15th, 2014. We have a new microphone up here, so I'm not sure how the feedback sounds and whether or not it's okay in TV land. We do have a quorum this evening. We're missing one member, but we have enough. And I will be voting as a member of council, even though I'm sitting again as President Pro Tem. We have a disposition of the minutes. We have a regular session of City Council minutes that were held December 1st, 2014. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting?
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The minutes from December 1st have been approved. Likewise, we had a special session of City Council held December 8th, 2014. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving those minutes from December 8th, 2014, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Those minutes have also been approved. Moving on to communications. We are in receipt of what's referred to as a application for change of corporate stock ownership for Stevens Fine Dining. And this is a liquor permit, correct? That's the official term. The responses must be postmarked no later than 12/22 of this month, this year, 2014. So we are communicating that. Any questions or comments?
I think it should be noted that it's not a new liquor permit, it's a change in basically stock name.
Thank you, Member Fall. Any other comments? Thank you. Likewise, we have notice from the Department of Commerce Division of Liquor Control, State of Ohio. This is a regular annual piece of legislation, or I'm sorry, notification that all permits within the community are expiring February 1st, 2015, which specifies the problems at the liquor permit premises and legal grounds for objections set forth by Ohio Revised Code. Let's see here. I'm trying to see what else on this needs to be communicated. Essentially, if we have any requests, we need to communicate that as well. Mayor, thank you.
Every year, all the liquor permits are renewed. They ask if there's any problems with it, and you could actually request a hearing, but the requirements are very specific for those for that hearing to actually say we revoke a existing permit. You would have to usually do with violations or underage drink repeated, as well as criminality of the owners. So really, this is just a pro forma renewal at this point. And as I say, unless we had some establishment that's really a bad egg, it probably wouldn't be worth the effort to actually stop the proceeding. But they're informing you it's time to renew, and everybody's got to get in line for that.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is within the whole city, every
liquor license. Yeah.
Correct, thank you.
Every permit.
When the liquor control people do an underage drinking violation, are we notified of that?
That's a good question. I don't know if we are or not. Do you know?
I think that having, if they're renewing permits, then we should get some kind of report from them about each establishment, because how else do we know whether there is a bad egg?
Well, you can go online, and if it's really bad, it would come to it would perk up to us eventually, through the police department at least.
Well, it'd be nice if the liquor control people would, instead of just, pro forma sort of thing.
As far as I know, there's a web page with violations in general and how they were established, and they go back quite a few years, so you could actually trail it. I think it's a spreadsheet. I've pulled it up before, and it covers some of the penalties too, or what the punishment was, if my memory's correct. It's been a while since I've looked at it, though, at least a year or two.
Right.
Thank you, Member Fall. Thank you, Mayor Weil. Any other comments? Okay. Any other communications from council members? Reports and communications from other elected officials, beginning with Mayor Weil.
Not really much to mention as far as I know. I know we're going to have some construction closings going on. One is by the wastewater treatment plant. They're going to be working near the bike path on the 16th. That's tomorrow to complete the 17th. Bike path will be open, but occasionally they'll have temporary closes as they move equipment across it, and they'll be having flaggers there. So this is by the wastewater treatment plant on the east side. The other one, as I see, we're also having construction on West Union Street project near Union and Congress. So the eastbound turn lane will be closed on South Congress during their work. I guess they're working with the, as I say, just completing that particular piece of concrete. Also, I've been told that the community center is going to be closed, of course, for our deep cleaning, 22nd to 28th. So just if you exercise there, you should expect not to be let in unless you want to help clean.
Could be exercise.
WellWorks?
Still working out the details with WellWorks to afford those with the community center to be able to utilize WellWorks during their open hours.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I have. Unless you have anything to add? No?
Auditor Hecht.
No report.
Thank you. Law Director Lang.
No report.
Thank you. Moving on to ordinances for third reading. Ordinance 118-14, an ordinance to stop imposition of the community center income tax levy authorized by Ordinance 137-95, effective January 1st, 2016, and amending Athens City Code, Title 15, Chapter 15.01, Income Tax, Section 15.01.03, Imposition of Tax, introduced by all members of council.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of ordinance 118-14.
Second.
And this particular ordinance was brought forward as we discussed our renewal of the Recreation and Community Center income tax levy of 0.1%. And you might recall that this did pass at our general election last November, and it will afford us an expansion of accessibility on all of our park sites, as well as plans for the rebuilding of our of a pool, ours being quite a few years old and in need of replacement. What this particular ordinance does is, as we had discussed early on, allows us to end the old income tax levy of the 0.1% 1 year early, so that there will not be an overlap as we've had with some other levies before. So we will be ending this one on December 31st, 2015. The reason it's coming before the Council tonight for the third reading is we did add one additional clause, and what this does was it gives an explanation that there will be sufficient funds to retire the city's debt on the community center without imposing the tax during the 2016 calendar year. So just clarification for historical purposes, but very important for us to have on the books.
Thank you, Member Nisley. Any questions or comment from council or the mayor?
One reason why we were able to do this is because we changed that. We recertified our bond rating about 5 years ago, through the auditor's office, and that enabled us to actually get reduced interest rates at the time. So it's one of those things you have to do once in a while, and we're glad we did it.
You saved about $350,000.
Thank you, Auditor Hecht. Thank you,
So
Mayor
it was
Wong.
worth all the work, right?
Yes.
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
It was a lot of work.
Thanks, thank
That's
you.
great.
Any other comments? We have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance 118-14. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 120-14, an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Athens, Ohio, during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2015, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of Ordinance 120-14.
Second.
And this is our guiding document. It's been crafted by the mayor and city administration, reviewed by the auditor's office, and governs how we will be spending our general funds as they come in from our income tax, plus then also other proprietary funds, and really guides the operations of city as we work during the year. So it's often that you'll hear during the year that we're making amendments to this particular document, this 120-14, and what we're doing is amending it as the budget needs to be adjusted during the coming year. But this particular ordinance will take effect January 1 and will guide us through the end of the year, next year, December 31st, 2015. So thanks to everybody who's spent so many hours preparing it, going over it, reviewing it, and we thank you. It's a lot of work.
Hopefully not too many warts in it. You'll notice general funds running about $13.4 million. 9.9 of that is, of course, is personnel, if you're looking at the transactional 100s. In general, of course, 27%, almost 28% is the police. 25%, almost 25% is fire. So you can tell where the emphasis goes on that. The total budget being $44.5 million, of course, is a little inflated because we're spending money on the wastewater treatment plant this year. We're continuing that. We did quite a bit of it last year. We're about halfway through or so. So again, that's why that 44 is higher than last year. I think it was like 34. So it's an uptick in terms of that. Some of the other things you might see changes. Again, this is a living document. Every time you do an appropriation, it will change. We had a meeting, of course, with Burgess and Nyepel about the parking garage earlier today. In terms of what needs to be done and how to unfold that. That will be probably being brought up sometime in January, just to be aware of it. So that we'll be moving into how to fix it and maintain it as best possible. Other than that, I don't know if anybody wants to add anything else. No. So, as I say, it was work, but we got it done. What?
I didn't hear what you said, but personnel is almost 75%.
Oh, yeah, total personnel is 75%, yes. Actually, yeah, yeah, but I was just saying the number, 9.9. Okay, that's all.
Thank you, Mayor Weil. Thank you, Member Nisley. We have a motion and a second to adopt Ordinance 120-14. If there's no other comments, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 123-14, an ordinance authorizing a contract extension of the city's third-party administrator for medical insurance and prescription coverage and declaring an emergency, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of Ordinance 123-14.
Second.
This particular ordinance, as stated in the title, renews our contract that we have with United Medical Resources, that is a subsidiary of United Healthcare. It's the organization with whom the city has insurance. And we often describe our health insurance plan that we're self-insured. So what this third-party administrator does is helps us with the claims during the year and other administrative duties that need to be done. In this same ordinance, we are also then renewing the contract with them for the prescription coverage. And I believe that's about the sum of the information for this. This will renew it effective for 1 year. We are looking very carefully at the contracts and also at our coverage as our Human Resources Director and City Administration work with, making sure we're in compliance with the Affordable Care Act.
Thank you, Member. Any questions or comments from council members? Mayor's office?
No.
Community members? We have a motion and a second to accept and adopt Ordinance 123-14. All those in favor of the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Moving on to ordinance 124-14. An ordinance amending ordinances 04-09 and 03-11 and 124-12 and the Athens City Code establishing salaries for certain elected officials, introduced by all council members.
Mr. President, I move adoption of ordinance 124-14.
Second.
This particular ordinance recommends pay increases for elected officials. The pay increases will become effective on January 1, 2016, so for effectively the next election cycle for those officials. It covers council members, council president, city auditor, the mayor, the law director, will become effective January 1, 2016. And the treasurer's position, the terms would become effective January 1, 2018. This does call for a 2% increase in each of those elected official positions.
Thank you, Member Nisley. Any questions or comments from council members? Mayor's office?
You mentioned treasurer goes into lineup, 2018,
18,
right?
correct.
Anything else, Mayor?
No.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the audience? Comments? We have a motion and a second for ordinance 124-14 to adopt. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Moving on to ordinance 126-14, an ordinance authorizing an extension of the current franchise agreement with Ohio Power Company for use of the city right-of-way as authorized by ordinance 143-13 and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adopt 126-14. This is pretty straightforward. It's a update for the right-of-way with AEP for a year. Something we usually do.
Thank you, Member Fall. Any questions or comments from council? Mayor Weil?
Again, this is an extension of it. We just kind of rolled it over. One of the things I'd like to see is a little bit more discussion for next year's, since it's a one-year extension. Some of the items, of course, there's always communication issues within the tree trimming and the maintenance of the trees. I've heard that over and over again. I don't know if it'll ever be perfect because everybody's got a different idea of how trees get trimmed. The other one, of course, is that we're trying to do the Upgrade Athens process, and it'd be nice to approach them, AEP in particular, about our unmetered streetlights. How to do that and what it would have. I would probably need authorization from council to enter into an agreement, because it'd probably be as they say, a P3, private-public partnership to actually replace the lights that are on our streets. But that would be something we could roll into this mix. And I'm just bringing it up early because that will give us a full year to play and think outside the box on that. Probably about every 6 months, I have some citizens come to me and say, why aren't the streetlights LEDs? And when I've talked to AEP, of course, they say the technology is not there, but the incentive for their side is not there either, because it is unmetered lights. The incentive for us overall would be to actually replace those light bulbs, even though they're there. It's their street lights, technically. But that would be where the agreement comes forward. We need authorization in terms of process and then a negotiation. And as I say, I'm bringing it up just for next year, so we have a whole 12 months to play.
One thing I would like to point out is that I know that there's a difference between right-of-way, tree trimming on our public right-of-way, the city right-of-way, and tree trimming that also occurs on private property. And there's a difference. I know that many people have been upset about some of the trimming that has gone on. I've gone around and looked at a lot of it, and I agree with much of some of the angst that people have been putting forward, and that's something that we can negotiate with, but we don't have a lot of control over private property tree trimming. So, but we do represent to AEP, and we will continue negotiating and representing citizens with this. I know in the past when we've had problems, we've gotten a tree planting program from them, and maybe that's time for them to look at this as part of the negotiation for next year.
And just to bring up the fact that what we're talking about, of course, is that they will be the first point out there in the electric supply business and not the tree trimming business. They've jobbed that out to Aspen and Nelson, I think it is, are the two. And again, that comes down to a dialogue. I've had many conversations with homeowners who they're talking two different languages. The tree trimmer says we're going to, prune this, and that's a different definition than the homeowner's idea of pruning. Yeah. So, maybe a metrics or a matrix of how to define that. So when that pruning gets to the point where it's maybe better to actually take the tree down rather than butcher it. Because I think we all, I tell you the truth, my father is a tree killer. When he prunes, it goes down to nothing, Me, I'll take a few pieces off, and so it goes from person to person what they expect to see when they say we're going to trim your tree. And that comes down to language, really.
And again, the ordinance only speaks to the city's right-of-way.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
As opposed to backyards and areas where.
But that's also something that we can continue discussing with them, because we represent our constituents, and, we're the ones who are in negotiation, and I don't think that it would behoove AEP to have a bunch of really mad constituents, citizens out there standing in front of their tree saying, you will not pass. So.
And that has occurred.
And it's just, unfortunately, I think that this time around they have done, once again, a really hack job. And a lot of people are left with a mess, and I think that that's totally inexcusable. Opinion.
Well, I would like to echo some of the sentiments expressed by Member Fall. I think she's been very diligent in communicating this over the years with the mayor's office, as well as our intent to hold AEP and Asplund accountable. We are a tree city, if I'm correct in acknowledging that. Fortunately, we also have a certified arborist within our city with Ron Lucas, which is super. He's our Deputy Service Safety Director. But it is a concern knowing that we are a tree city and that we have an opportunity to help set standards for our future and the children that will continue to live here and move here in the future. So I think it's important for us to hold them accountable within this contract. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? We have a motion and a second to accept Ordinance 126-14. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 127-14. An ordinance authorizing the expenditure of funds for engineering services associated with the North Congress Street Sanitary Sewer Project, number 289, pursuant to Ordinance 108-14, introduced by Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt Ordinance 127-14.
Second.
Thank you. As was mentioned a couple weeks ago, this is to authorize expenditure of $45,000 for engineering services on one of our older sewer lines, as well as the cross connections of storm drain that is up in the North Congress area, something that's much needed in the city of Athens.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Any questions or comments from council? Mayor's office, Safety Director. This one's much needed, we all know. We have a motion and a second to adopt Ordinance 127-14. All those in favor of adopting the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Moving on to Ordinance 128-14, an ordinance declaring certain equipment at the community center no longer needed for a municipal purpose, introduced by Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt Ordinance 128-14.
Second.
Thank you. Again, this is to To dispose of equipment that has long surpassed its even trade-in value of any type. Most of it, well, all of it, is weight equipment from the community center weight room. It's a large number of pieces. But again, there is no more trade-in value, so therefore it's being disposed.
And if I'm correct in remembering, this is some of the original equipment that first went into the building.
I think most of it is, and this will be done by sealed bid, I believe, is the process.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Any other questions or comments from council? We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 128-14. All those in favor of adopting the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 129-14, an ordinance authorizing a contract increase for operation of a public access television station for the city of Athens, Ohio, introduced by Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt ordinance 129-14.
Second?
Thank you. Again, this is an ordinance that will increase the current contract from $56,000 to $68,000, most of which is just covering the operating expenses, but also to increase the executive director's salary, which hasn't changed since 2011.
Thank you, Councilmember Patterson. Any questions or comments from council? Mayor's office? No other comments? We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 129-14. All those in favor of adopting the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 130-14, an ordinance authorizing right-of-way acquisition, construction, and construction engineering of a bike path from Armitage to Columbus Road, project number 270, originally introduced by Councilmember Pappy, but I believe that Councilmember Cochran will be speaking this evening.
I move adoption of ordinance 130-14.
Second.
And this is simply an ordinance that will allow us to get underway on a project that will connect the bike path across the Hocking River back behind AceNet and allow for increased transportation options and recreation options for residents of Athens and residents who may live outside the city and wish to access the city in this way. So we're glad to be seeing this project move forward. It's been several years in the works, and we've had lots of information shared about that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council members? I'll briefly acknowledge again my support for this ordinance. I know, having spent time with the bike pedestrian master plan and creation and determination of how we want to see the city move forward, this has been a part of that effort, and now we're seeing the hard work come to fruition. Mayor's office, any questions or comments? We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 130-14. All those in favor of the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. We're moving on to ordinances for second reading. Typically, ordinances for second reading are just that. We're just reading them and going through the overall third readings that we may or may not. There may be amending or adopting or amending, suspending this evening. Ordinance 121-14, an ordinance authorizing staffing levels, a non-union pay scale, and slotting for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2015, repealing all ordinances inconsistent therewith, and declaring an emergency, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to amend ordinance 121-14.
Second.
And the purpose of this amendment is to clarify in our non-union pay scales the fire captain's annual wages, which Those particular persons are based on, with a 48-hour work week that comes to a total of 2,496 hours per year, not the 2,080 hours per year of the other employees. And what this does is puts them, I believe, by that definition, at it's above the maximum wage range. So we need to indicate this in this amendment so that we have the history of this, of why it is at that higher rate based on the number of hours.
Thank you, Member Nisley. Any questions or comments on amending? Mayor's office. Okay, we have a motion and a second for amending the ordinance only. All those in favor of amending ordinance 121-14, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been amended and read for the first time.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that we consider ordinance 121-14 under suspension of the rules.
Second.
The purpose for this suspension being that we are in need of passing this particular ordinance before year's end, so that the sliding scale is effectively reflected, or correctly reflected in our finances for the city.
Thank you, Member Nisley. Any questions or comments from council on the ordinance or suspending? Mayor's office.
It's supposed to be effective first pay period 2015, so get it done.
Thank you, sir.
One question. Does this follow the proper procedures of rules of council to do what we're doing? I've never heard of us ever doing this before.
To amend and then suspend?
Amend, suspend, then try to pass.
Yes.
Law Director Lang?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, we have. Yes.
We've done it before.
Yes, it has been done before, so it can be done again.
Indeed.
That's what I'm going to know.
Yep.
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Law Director Lang, for clarification. Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second to suspend the ordinance, correct? We're voting on suspension. All those in favor of suspending the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Ordinance 121-14 is now under suspension.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt ordinance 121-14.
Second.
And this is, as described, the non-union pay scale and slotting for our next fiscal year beginning January 1 through December 31st, 2015.
Thank you, Member Nice. So we have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 121-14. Any questions or comments before we move? Auditor Hecht.
Well, I was just going to clarify that this has been read before council and discussed, and this is really a minor correction because of the hours worked for fire personnel. Their pay rate is calculated differently, and they actually, the captain's annual pay rate is above the minimum and maximum, and rather than raise that maximum for everybody in that range, it's just a clarification, letting people know that if, that they say how much so-and-so make this year, it will be over that maximum, but there's a reason for that. It's because of the way their pay is calculated. However, on a 2,080 hour a year pay rate, which is what all the rest of us are on, it would fall within that range.
Thank you. Mayor Weil.
Also, Section 2 authorizes a 2% pay increase, just so that's what's going on for the non-union.
Thank you, Auditor Hecht and Mayor Weil. We have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance. All those in favor of adopting ordinance 121-14, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Again, we're on ordinances for second reading. We're now moving on to ordinance 122-14, an ordinance adopting a fringe benefit package for non-union personnel within the city of Athens and repealing all ordinances inconsistent therewith and declaring an emergency. Introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to amend Ordinance 12214.
Second.
And the amendments requested here are, I'd say, a clarification on definition. Two things, changing for the fire chief and the fire captain, use of particular certifications such as first aid for first responder and CPR certificate and fire inspector certificate, changing that to the general word certifications. And the same would be true of the fire captain we're using, rather than specific terminology of a certification, just replying with the word, a more generalized word, certifications. The second change in this is to clarify, as we mentioned briefly in the previous ordinance, that the fire personnel work a 48-hour work week, and so we have corrected in the section on donation of sick leave to include that fire personnel may donate up to a maximum of 48 hours and must have a minimum bank of 192 hours of accumulated and unused sick leave after the donation. So this is clarifying to the 48 hours of their work week for the donation.
Thank you, Member Nisley. Any questions or comments on amending? We have a motion and a second to amend Ordinance 122-14. All those in favor of amending the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been amended and read for the first time.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to request consideration of this ordinance 122-14 under suspension of the rules.
Second.
The reason for the suspension being is that this is a fringe benefit package that that changes and which become effective January 1, 2015. And we have discussed this several times before, but we are now in need of passing this before year's end so that we have current policy.
Thank you, Member Nisley. Any questions or comment on suspension? We have a motion and a second to suspend the ordinance 122-14. And again, we're voting on suspension only here. All those in favor of suspending the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt ordinance 122-14.
Second.
And as explained, this is the fringe benefit package for non-union personnel. We have been through the discussion of some of the other changes earlier, and then we have the amendment clarifying some of the language tonight.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Council, Mayor's Office, community? We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 122-14. All those in favor of adopting the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Moving on to ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 131-14, an ordinance authorizing the adoption of an agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police, Ohio Labor Council, Inc., and the City of Athens Police, lieutenants, and communications officers concerning wages and working conditions and declaring an emergency, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of ordinance 131-14.
Second.
Do we need a suspension? Suspend rules.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. President.
Yes.
I move that we consider this ordinance 131-14 under suspension of the rules.
Thank you. And
Second.
we have a first, so we have a second here. And reason for suspension?
And that this is a new contract for the Fraternal Order of Police employees of the city that becomes effective on actually November 30th, 2014, and will extend through December 31st, 2017. So we're very much in need of putting this into effect.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules for ordinance 131-14. And again, we're voting on suspension only. All those in favor of suspending the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now I move to adopt ordinance 131-14.
Now I second.
Thank you very much. Thank you also to all the people who have so patiently worked through the details of this agreement. Council members are in receipt of a full copy of the contract. I'll highlight a few of the points here. As mentioned just a moment ago, this agreement will be from November 30th, 2014 through December 31st, 2017. It is 3 years and 1 month on the contract. It's a little bit unusual, but what we're doing is putting this into effect so that it reflects the calendar year. And it has been approved by the State Employees Relations Board. This was a contract that was fully negotiated 3 years ago, and some of the changes that are being put through now are clarification of language and also making changes so that they're consistent with the other bargaining units within the city. It will, over the period of 3 years, include a 7.5% pay increase over that 3-year total. It will also have change of donation of time of sick leave from 40 to 80 hours. It will have an additional $50 per year on the uniforms expense and slightly increase the education incentive for those holding bachelor's and master's degree.
If I may, the language was a little bit different in their contract. It's actually a slight increase for those who hold a 4-year degree. Am I getting that right?
So it says 4-year. Okay, thank you.
Mayor Weil.
I'd like to thank the negotiation team, Lisa Eliason, Jennifer Gabriel, and Paula Mosley for putting it together. I understand it was a pretty serious and no-nonsense negotiation, and amicable as well. So
It's done pretty quickly, and my office is appreciative of that. When it drags on too long and we have to retro pay all their different payouts, it's pretty complicated. So they have to be hand done, it's not a matter of pushing a button in our system. So having this done by the end of this calendar year really helps. And it wasn't our idea to change the contract ending dates, but that being on a calendar year will certainly help us in the future. I was just going to comment on the sick leave, as that really just brings them into what everyone else is already doing as far as being able to donate time. So it's not, they've been given anything big and extra or anything like that.
Thank you. Thank you, Auditor, for the explanation. Mayor Patterson.
I thank you as well. There's 3 unions. It's on a 3-year cycle, year after year after year, and so thank you for all the hard work and helping to navigate and negotiate.
Any other questions or comments? We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 131-14. All those in favor of adopting the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Moving on to announcements and other business. I believe there were some appointments to present. Is that correct?
It is. Thank you, Mr. President. As a lot of you are aware, there are several commissions as well as several boards that are advisory to the mayor and to administration. I want to give a big thank you to all of those people who are appointed and serve on those. They're all voluntary, so people volunteering their own time to serve on our commissions and boards. So I kind of get excited about some of these reappointments or appointments. It's fun to do. So to start with, we have a reappointment of Robert Fry to serve on the City County Health Board. It's a 5-year term starting 1/1/15, so starting January 15th for a second 10-year term, which is, again, a big commitment, but it's great to have citizen dedication like that. So I'd like to make a motion to reappoint Bob Fry for a 5-year term starting January 1st, 2015.
Second.
Any comments?
He's one of the appointed positions. I think I have 2 on that particular board. He's served before. He was, I think, the owner of the Athens Medical Lab that's on East State Street. He's retired since then, but he still wants to be involved. Highly recommended by Chuck Hammer, and is involved, which is a good thing.
Thank you, Mayor Weil. Thank you, Mayor Patterson. So we have a motion and a second to accept Mr. Robert Fry as continuing service work. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you for your service work and reappointment. It's good news, Mr. Fry.
The second appointment, it's a new appointment onto Arts, Parks, and Recreation Advisory Board. It's Marilyn Zweyer. Marilyn has been, or has worked for the Athens County Public Libraries for 19 years, received her master's degree in library sciences, University of South Carolina, and has come forward saying that she wanted to serve on another very important board in the city.
Thank you. And that was, again, could you clarify the name?
Marilyn Zweyer.
Zweyer, thank you.
Z-W-A-Y-E-R.
Thank you.
And I believe there's still a vacancy. Rich is talking to somebody. There's one more vacancy on the Health, Arts, Parks, and Recreation Advisory Board. They will have their job. They'll be busy this next year for the pool and the levee.
So we have a motion and a second. Is that correct? Do we have a second?
Did I make a motion?
I don't make a motion. You know what? You may not have made a motion.
Did I? No. I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, wonderful.
I'd like to second.
To appoint Marilyn Zweyer.
Thank you. Wonderful. And if there's no further comments, we have a motion and a second to accept Marilyn Zweyer as service work for Arts, Parks, and Recreation Advisory Board. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. It's been accepted. And again, thank you for your service work. Any other announcements and other businesses? I added a couple S's there. Businesses is in the season of this, you know.
It's the last meeting of the year. Good New Year and all that stuff.
No other announcements and other business. Okay. We have a moment in the meeting for opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that were not covered on the agenda. I do believe we have a couple of speakers this evening. Unfortunately, protocol requires that there's a limit to the speaking time, which I think is 3 minutes per person. So we do have a little timer here, but we'd love to hear from comments. And I do believe we had a couple speakers, if I'm correct. Yes, wonderful. Please, protocol requires that you come up to the podium and then sign in as well. And we won't start the clock until you are ready to speak, so. There should be a clipboard up there to sign in.
I also have some handouts too, if you don't mind.
No, thank you.
Hi, thank you. Oh, I'm not elected.
That's okay.
Thank you.
You'll read it.
Okie dokie.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Hi. So before I begin, I wanted to thank all of you very much for allowing me to speak here and just for welcoming me. So thank you very, very much. My name is Christopher Gegge, and I am the Deputy Communications Director for Why Marriage Matters Ohio, which is the statewide public education campaign in support of marriage equality. As a 501c3 organization, we've joined together the Human Rights Campaign, Equality Ohio, the American Civil Liberties Union, and Freedom to Marry to spread and grow support for marriage equality across the state. As you probably remember, in 2004, specifically February of 2004, House Bill 272 was passed, which said that only one man and one woman could get married and effectively denied same-sex couples the ability to get married. Shortly thereafter, in November of 2004, Issue 1 was passed on the ballot. 62% of Ohioans voted to deny gay and lesbian couples the freedom to marry the person they love. On that measure, however, was one beacon of hope. Of Ohio's 88 counties, only Athens voted down the measure.
Bless you. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. In the subsequent years, the City Council passed domestic partnerships and benefits for same-sex couples, furthering the support for our LGBT citizens. Now, 10 years later, we need your help once more. We need your help because every single day that the freedom to marry is denied, gay and lesbian couples experience very real harms. They experience these harms because of the person that they love. And while the fate of marriage equality for now lies within the courts, the reality is we don't know what's going to happen at that level. With the Supreme Court deciding mid-January whether or not to take up the case, we need your help to continue to uplift the message that Ohio is ready for marriage equality. So I ask you once more to continue to give hope, not only to the Athenians, but to all Ohioans. In front of you, you have a sheet to sign on to our coalition of over 100 elected officials who support the freedom to marry, including, I might add, Mayor Weil, City Auditor Hecht, and Council Member Cochran. So thank you very much for that. So please, join your voices to theirs. Help us spread the message that that Ohio is ready for marriage equality. Please help us end these harms. Please help us grow our voices and come to the day that every single loving and committed couple has the freedom to marry the person that they love. Thank you.
Thank you. And with 12 seconds to spare.
Yes.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for coming to speak before us this evening.
And also, if you have any questions, like I have cards, I'm more than happy to speak to you.
Sure. And it might also be worthwhile to come again speak after the new year too, and you might have a slightly bigger audience then as well.
Yeah, I'd love that. Thank you.
Yes. Any questions or comments? Any other people wanting to speak this evening for legislative items that were not covered on the agenda? Prior to adjourning, I will just wish everyone a safe and happy holiday and festive season. Safe travels to all. I hope I speak for all of us. I'm sure I do. So be safe and enjoy the time with family and loved ones. Thank you. We are adjourned at approximately 8 p.m.